My name is Lia. I was just about to knock on my parents' door when I overheard them tell my brother, "Don't stress." I still remember the exact chill that ran through me that night. The hallway was dim, the old wooden floor creaking under my feet as I tiptoed toward my parents' room. I was holding a small box, a framed photo of me and my younger brother, Ryan. Something I'd planned to give them as a surprise after dinner. I thought it might finally make things feel normal again. But before I could even knock, I heard my mother's voice, low and careful. "Don't stress, Ryan. She doesn't need to know everything." Something in me froze. The box trembled in my hands. My father added quietly, "We'll handle it. Just act normal around your sister." I didn't move. I just stood there, feeling the second stretch and twist. I wasn't supposed to hear that, but I did, and in that single moment the way I saw my family, the way I saw myself, began to crack. Growing up, we weren't the picture-perfect family, but we were close enough. My mom loved to host Sunday dinners, my dad always told bad jokes that made us groan but secretly laugh, and Ryan, he was my shadow. 2 years younger, full of energy, the kind of guy everyone liked instantly. We used to share secrets, sneak out for late-night ice cream runs, talk about dreams, his about starting a business, mine about moving to New York and writing stories that meant something. When I left for college, I thought our bond was unbreakable. But distance does strange things. Calls turned to texts, and texts turned into silence. I blamed life, work, maybe even adulthood, never betrayal. That night, after hearing them whisper, I quietly stepped back, my heart pounding against my ribs. The air in the house suddenly felt different, heavier. I told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe Ryan was just in trouble financially. Maybe they were protecting him from embarrassment. But still, I couldn't shake the words. "She doesn't need to know." Later, I sat alone in my childhood room, staring at the ceiling. The glow from the streetlight bled through the curtains, turning everything gold and gray. My phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. "You here yet? Can't wait to catch up." I stared at it for a long time before replying, "Yeah, just got in. See you tomorrow." When morning came, the house smelled like pancakes and coffee. My mom's peace offering for every unspoken tension. She smiled when she saw me too brightly, like someone trying to hide a secret behind her teeth. "Emmy, finally home," she said, wrapping me in a hug that felt both warm and hollow. Ryan appeared a few minutes later, all grins and easy charm. "Look who decided to visit," he said, ruffling my hair like he used to. I smiled back, but something inside me didn't trust it anymore. We spent the morning pretending nothing had changed. But my eyes kept searching for cracks. The way my dad avoided looking directly at me. The way Ryan seemed on edge whenever I mentioned my job or asked about his life. At lunch, my mom casually mentioned that Ryan had been through a lot lately. But before I could ask what she meant, Ryan jumped in. "Nothing serious," he said quickly. "Just work stuff, you know how it is?" I nodded, forcing a smile. But his hands were shaking slightly as he lifted his glass. That night, when everyone went to bed, I couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet, my thoughts too loud. So, I wandered downstairs, hoping maybe some warm milk would calm me down. Cliché, I know. That's when I saw my dad's laptop left open on the kitchen table, still glowing faintly. It wasn't snooping, at least that's what I told myself. I just wanted to check the time. But the moment my eyes landed on the email subject lines, my breath caught. Subject: URGENT Emily Carter's application review. Subject: follow up regarding transfer of funds. Subject: Ryan Carter reimbursement confirmation. I scrolled down and my chest tightened. It was my scholarship application. The one I'd worked so hard for. The one that had mysteriously been denied 2 years ago, forcing me to drop out for a semester and work 2 jobs to survive. And there it was. My father's name, approving a relocation of financial support to Ryan. I felt my throat close. They'd taken my scholarship money. My parents had moved it to my brother's account. I didn't even realize I was crying until a tear hit the keyboard. All those sleepless nights, the humiliation of asking professors for extensions, the way I blamed myself for not being good enough. All of it had been because of them. Because they'd chosen him. I closed the laptop slowly, hands trembling. Upstairs, the house creaked. Someone turning over in bed. I stood there in the glow of that screen, breathing hard, feeling something new form inside me. Not just hurt. Not just anger, something colder. something that whispered quietly make them see what they did. And from that night forward, I wasn't the same daughter who smiled at family dinners or laughed at old jokes. I was someone else, someone watching, listening, waiting. I woke up the next morning pretending nothing was wrong. The sunlight poured through the blinds, dust floating in the air like tiny ghosts. My mom was already in the kitchen, humming to the radio, her voice light and careless. Ryan was at the counter, scrolling through his phone, laughing at something on the screen. For a second, I almost believed the illusion again. That we were still that normal, happy family. But then I remembered the emails. The money, the lies. And the illusion shattered all over again. I sat down forcing a smile. "Morning," I said softly. Ryan looked up. "Morning, sis. You sleep okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "Perfectly." He smiled, that same charming, boyish grin that used to melt my heart. But now it felt different. Rehearsed maybe. Like he was playing a part. I kept my eyes on my coffee cup, swirling the dark liquid slowly, watching it spin like a storm I couldn't stop. When my parents joined us at the table, my dad started talking about neighborhood gossip. How the Johnsons' fence had blown down, how someone was complaining about noise last weekend. Everything felt painfully ordinary, and that made it worse. I wanted to scream, "How could you sit there like nothing happened? How could you betray me like that?" But I didn't, not yet. Instead, I studied them. Every gesture, every glance. My mom's smile seemed tighter now, as if she knew I was noticing too much. My dad's laugh was too loud, like he was trying to fill the silence between us. Ryan looked uncomfortable every time I made eye contact. After breakfast, I went for a walk just to breathe. The air outside was sharp and cold, the kind that makes your lungs sting. I walked past the park where Ryan and I used to play as kids. I could still see us. Him pushing me on the swing, both of us laughing until we couldn't breathe. I remembered how he used to say, "I'll always look out for you, Em." The words echoed in my mind now like a cruel joke. By the time I came back, I'd already decided I needed answers. Not guesses, not whispers through doors. I needed to hear it from them. That evening, after dinner, I waited until Ryan was in the living room watching TV, and my parents were clearing the table. I leaned against the doorway and said, "Can we talk?" My mom looked up instantly, her hands frozen over a stack of plates. "Of course, honey. What's wrong?" I looked at my dad. "I found something on your laptop last night." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. My dad's face went pale. My mom's eyes flickered nervously. "Emily?" she said carefully. "What did you find?" "Emails," I said quietly. "About my scholarship. About the money you transferred to Ryan." Ryan appeared in the doorway behind me, his voice sharp. "You went through Dad's stuff." I turned to him, my chest tightening. "You took what was mine, Ryan. You knew how hard I worked for that. You let me think I failed." His face twisted, somewhere between guilt and defensiveness. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it?" I shot back. "Because from where I stand it looks exactly like that." My mom stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Sweetheart, we didn't mean to hurt you. Ryan was in a bad place. His tuition, his bills. So you took from me." My voice cracked on the last word. "You let me drop out. You watched me fall apart, and you said nothing." No one spoke. The only sound was the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the wall clock, each second louder than the last. My dad finally sighed, rubbing his temples. "We thought we'd make it right later. You were doing well, Emily. We didn't think it would hurt you that much." I laughed, but it came out hollow. "Didn't think it would hurt me." My hands were shaking now. I was working double shifts at a diner just to pay rent. "You told me to be proud of my independence while you were secretly funding him." Ryan took a step closer, his voice soft. I didn't ask them to do that." I looked straight into his eyes. "But you didn't stop them either." That's when his shoulders dropped. The guilt was there. Plain, naked, ugly. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The anger hardened into resolve. I realized I wasn't just hurt, I was invisible to them. Always had been. The responsible one. The strong one. The one who didn't need help. That night I sat in my old room with the door locked, replaying everything. The whispers. The lies. The faces. I could still hear my mother's words. "She doesn't need to know everything." But now I did. And they needed to know what it felt like. Revenge wasn't something I'd ever thought about before. But as I stared at the photo on my nightstand, the one I'd planned to give them, I realized I didn't want to destroy them. I wanted to teach them what it felt like to lose trust, to question every word, every smile. So, I started to plan. Quietly, patiently. I didn't yell. I didn't confront them again. Instead, I smiled at breakfast, laughed at their stories, hugged Ryan before bed. Just like old times. But inside, I was already building the script of my revenge, piece by piece. I would make them feel the same uncertainty they'd given me. The same doubt. The same silence behind closed doors. And they would never even see it coming. I started small, like a surgeon testing an incision. Nothing dramatic, no public accusations, just tiny adjustments that would slowly shift the truth into the light. Revenge, I decided, would be a work of patience and precision. It would be about reclaiming my dignity and making them feel the keen edge of the uncertainty they'd placed inside me. The first thing I did was gather evidence. Not because I wanted to ruin them completely, but because I needed certainty. Receipts, bank statements, copies of email threads. I photographed the emails on Dad's laptop the night I found them, saved PDFs, and wrote a timeline on a fresh notebook, page dates, transfers, the semesters I had to pause school. The nights I cried into my pillow because I couldn't pay a bill. Writing it down made the story real again. It turned the ache into something I could hold and present. It felt almost clinical, the way I cataloged each hurt. My hands trembled the first few times, but the trembling soon turned into steadiness. Next, I rebuilt my financial narrative quietly. I started freelancing again, writing articles, ghostwriting blog posts for small businesses. And I funneled that money into a little account my parents never knew about. I wanted them to learn that I could stand on my own 2 feet, yes, but more importantly, I wanted to control the timing of when they realized I no longer needed their help. I opened a small business page under a professional name, nothing flashy. Just a tidy portfolio that proved I wasn't the naive girl who'd been pushed aside. I also started to shift my social presence. I knew Mom loved to brag, secretly and softly, about her children's successes to relatives and neighbors. So I began posting things that were true but calculated. A photo on a Monday, me in a coffee shop with a laptop and a byline caption. A Wednesday update, a screenshot of a humble invoice paid. Nothing gloating, just tiny, undeniable facts that, if noticed, would speak louder than any argument. I wanted their community to see a version of me that contradicted the story they'd been telling everyone. The one where I was struggling and grateful for their generosity. I used Ryan's own kindness against him. Not viciously, but cleverly. I started inviting him out for coffee. Like old times, I said, and I listened more than I spoke. People reveal themselves when they relax. He was no different. One afternoon, over 2 sweet lattes, he confessed, "I've been under pressure. Dad keeps insisting they handle things. It's easier to take it and not ask questions." His voice was low, ashamed. I only nodded. "You didn't think I'd notice?" I asked softly. He looked away. "I didn't think you'd have proof." His admission tightened my chest, but it also gave me something leverage that wasn't mean, just honest. Then came the social subtlety. The kind that stings over and over. I started showing up at family gatherings differently. Not cold, not hostile. I was warm, almost radiant. The person I'd always been. But I began to weave stories into conversations that positioned me as someone independent, competent, and quietly rebuilding. At a barbecue, I mentioned a freelance client by name. They loved the piece I wrote on local artisans. At a neighborhood fundraiser, I casually asked about sponsorships and offered to help coordinate. People started to notice that Emily, the daughter they thought needed saving, was thriving. I watched my parents' faces when neighbors complimented me, flashes of surprise, then something like guilt. It was deliciously slow. I also made sure to create safe confessions for them. I'd arrange moments that encouraged them to reveal their conscience. Once, over dinner, I said, "I remember Dad used to bank everything in a little envelope. Do you still keep that?" My mom tensed, then laughed nervously. "Oh, that old thing," she deflected. I leaned in, quieter than a whisper. "It's okay if you tell me why." There was a pause, and for a heartbeat, I thought they might apologize. They didn't. But the seed had been planted. Guilt needs oxygen. I gave it space to breathe, and it grew into pained looks and restless nights that I could see plain as day. Most importantly, I reclaimed my voice publicly, but not in a way that would seem vindictive. I applied for a grant I'd been too embarrassed to try for when I was the failed daughter. I wrote an essay, honest, raw, about overcoming financial setbacks without naming names. When the editor accepted it and the piece went live, my inbox filled with supportive messages. A few old acquaintances forwarded the article to my mom's friends. One neighbor called my mother to say, "Emily's doing so well. You must be proud." I heard the brittle edge in my mother's reply. Of course. It wasn't a confession, but it was a ripple that spread. Every small move was calculated to make them face the contradiction. They had told themselves they were protecting me, but their protection had been a choice to prioritize Ryan. I wanted them to sit with that contradiction in between their teeth, to chew it, to taste it. I wanted their smiles to feel heavier, their compliments to feel like apologies they couldn't voice. And all the while I kept my own dignity intact. I never embarrassed them at parties, never called them out in public, never demanded immediate restitution. My revenge was a mirror, reflective, slow and precise. I would reveal the truth by living it, by letting the evidence and the community and the gentle pressure of social truth do the rest. By the time I put the final piece in place, the published essay, the thriving freelance profile, and a quiet note sent to a cousin with a copy of the bank transfer timeline, I felt something settle in my chest. It wasn't triumph exactly. It was a heavy, controlled calm, the kind you get after you've prepared a difficult operation and the patient is stable. I was ready. The stage was nearly set, and the audience, my family, our neighborhood, the little ecosystem that had watched me struggle, was about to see a version of me they had chosen to ignore. The plan wasn't mean, it wasn't reckless, it was inevitable.